Hey guys, welcome. Your Forest. I'm Matthew Christoph, and today I've got a podcast regarding invasive species, particularly one invasive species. It's called Prussian carp. So carp, they're not native to North America, and we've recently found them in the watersheds in the river valley, or in the rivers and some lakes in southern Alberta, and they have a unique ability to kind of take over, and they can become a real problem for the ecosystems down there. So I brought on Britt Schmidt, and she is a fisheries biologist for the Alberta Conservation Association. If you guys remember, I forget which episode it was, maybe 14 or I forget, but I had Todd Zimmerling on from the Alberta Conservation Association last year, and he spoke to what the ACA is, and they are an organization that they do a lot of research and studies into populations, wildlife populations in Alberta. And so they took it upon themselves to do this Prussian carp research, and they're starting this summer. They're just kind of getting ramped up. It's really important because they're not sure how these carp got into the watersheds. They don't know where they came from or what the deal is, and they don't really know much about them. So they're trying to sort it out right now. They need to know the implications and how to manage them, how to eradicate them, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it was really good. Britt knows her stuff, even though they're just getting started. We're hoping to get her back on eventually to tell us kind of the results of what they find. But yeah, it was a really good episode. She really knows what she's talking about, and I hope you guys like it. As for sponsors, just the normal three: Greenlink Forestry, doing resource inventory analysis, and also the Forest Resource Improvement Association of Alberta. They provide some funding for me, so I'm really, really appreciative for that. It allows me to do this, and allows me to keep doing this. And also Damage Timber. Damage Timber is an apparel company out of Edmonton here, and they are selling clothing and hats and toques and water bottles and stuff while they're selling them, they're trying to give back to the environmental sciences community. So they're taking 10% of what they get from all their sales and putting it towards a bursary or a scholarship program for environmental sciences. They'll be giving that away in the fall. So if you guys want to support something like that, like, we all need to wear clothes and hats and all that kind of stuff. So if you want to support something like that, you can go to damagetimber.com and you can buy a hat or t-shirt or a hoodie. And I think he's got a big sale coming on right away, or it might be on right now. And yeah, you can support environmental sciences through the sale of clothing. So it's awesome. And if you punch in Your Forest 10 at checkout, you can get 10% off as well. So yeah, really cool. Check them out. And without any further messing around, here is Britt Schmidt and myself talking about carp, as well as a couple other things. Fish. It's all about fish. Here we go. So let's just start off. So what's your background anyways? You're a fisheries biologist, right?
Yes, I'm a fisheries biologist with the Alberta Conservation Association.
Okay. And how long have you been with the ACA?
I've been with them just about 4 years.
Okay, so a while now.
Yeah.
And you've been working on like all fishery stuff, I'm guessing.
Yeah, kind of a variety of projects. We have the opportunity to work in wildlife and land management as well, but I'm mostly on the fishery side. Okay,
cool. And then, if I had Todd Zimmerling on, whatever that was last year sometime, and he explained quickly kind of what the ACA does. Do you want to maybe get into that just real quickly? So for people that aren't initiated? Yeah. So we're a delegated government organization.
So we work closely with government, but we do operate as a nonprofit.
Mm-hmm.
We have kind of 4 main groups that we operate under. We've got our land management group. So that involves a lot of like purchasing lands across the province and creating conservation sites that are open to the public. We've got our wildlife group that does kind of wildlife related conservation. Our fisheries group, same thing, fisheries related projects.
Right.
And then we do a lot of stocking as well.
Yeah.
And then our communications department.
So you guys do most of the stocking in the province, right? Or what's the deal
we
there?
kind of split it with government.
Oh, okay.
We tend to do a lot of the smaller stocked ponds,
Okay.
but they're kind of concentrated around city centers, kind of Edmonton, Red Deer, Calgary region.
Oh, okay. So you're not like renting helicopters and dropping them from buckets?
No.
into the
They're all pretty local. The idea is to get people into fishing. So it kind of fills some of the the gap around some of those city centers where it's easy to get like kids and stuff out, and we're trying to grow our fishing community. So that's one of the good ways to do that.
Yeah, for sure. No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what the breakup there was, but
yeah. So I think we stock about 61 or 62 ponds in the province. Yeah.
Okay, and mostly trout, or
mostly rainbow trout, and we do a little bit of brown trout as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. So I guess getting into the whole invasive species Prussian carp situation there.
Yeah.
So Prussian carp, like what exactly, like, where did they come from? Like, what are they? Yeah, all that good stuff. Because I have no idea.
Yeah. So they, from my understanding, they were native at one point in Asia and maybe parts of Central Europe.
Okay.
But they've become invasive in Europe, and have become quite a problem over there. And then, just recently, actually, we had our first recorded Prussian carp in North America, and that was in Alberta, it being in kind of like a natural open water body, not just like a stocked pond.
Right.
No one really knows exactly how they got here. There's speculation that, someone released them into our system, and there's a bunch of reasons biologically why they've become so spread out already throughout our water system.
Oh, so it's like a problem already.
Yes.
This isn't just like an emerging issue. Like it's really, it's emerging, but it's emerging quickly.
Yeah, they're spreading like fairly fast.
Okay.
Yeah.
So people have these as like, do you think they have them as like pets or something? Or are they in like those ponds that people have outdoors, that type of thing? Or
yeah, I mean, I would have to look into a little bit more as to whether you can even obtain something like that. I don't think that you can through the aquarium trade. And I know the government of Alberta has been really trying to curb that kind of aquarium side of things.
Yeah.
But I think there was, I think you can potentially get them from like grocery stores and stuff like that, when you can go and get live fish. Like, I think that at one point you may have been able to get them from that.
Right.
You could have been able to get them in the States, and someone kind of brought them in a bucket over.
Right.
Yeah. So there's a few different ways that they could have been released into our systems.
Yeah, that's weird. So it would have had to been like quite a number that would have been released, don't you think, to like spread, or are they just that prolific that they just take off?
Yeah, I think there's probably, I mean, I don't see
somebody,
right? Bringing in like 1,000 of them or anything like that. But if you get a bucket here and a bucket there, then I think they can spread pretty quick. Yeah.
It seems strange. Like, I wonder if it's just a situation where somebody like didn't want them anymore and just got rid of them, or if it was, it seems pretty weird that it would be just like someone's trying to cause a problem. It seems strange.
No, and it's not necessarily cause a problem. I think
yeah.
people kind of in the past with other species, you see it with perch and stuff like that, where people want to fish for something, and so they put it somewhere because they feel like it's a good fishing opportunity, but don't maybe realize the negative impacts or how quickly they can go from one water body to another.
So literally people picking up perch from one lake and dumping in the next lake because they want to fish there
next
year.
We call it like the Johnny Perch seed.
So that happens, eh? Yeah, that's...
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess it's tough for people to understand the implications there because they think that, it's a native species, I'm putting it into another native lake, like it shouldn't be a big deal. But I guess, if those lakes are historically have different species, they don't have perch, then that can cause huge ramifications for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So the Prussian carp, so we don't know where they came from. It's all like, so when did we first find them?
I think 2000 was, I believe, the first time that they had noticed them here. And then when was this? They just released a paper in 2014. But I think they found them in 2006 was like 100% the first confirmed one in some lakes down south.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Lakes, and I think Todd was talking about they found them in the Bow River in Calgary or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
So they've been found kind of throughout a bunch of southern rivers. So Bow River, the Red Deer River. They've been found in the South Saskatchewan river basin. And then, the Old Man and stuff is all kind of connected. So, so that's kind of one of the questions that we're going to get at this year is, we know that they're in these rivers, but how far do they stretch in all the rivers? And are they going further into Saskatchewan, for example?
That's kind of what I was going to ask next was like how spread out are they? Are they kind of concentrated, but you guys are just sorting that out right now kind of thing?
Yeah, so this project that I'm running this summer is kind of getting a handle of what is the current distribution right now? What do we know? There have been people working on it. For example, Dr. Mark Posch out of the University of Alberta has a bunch of students working on Prussian carp.
Okay.
And so they've kind of been looking at their distribution a little bit over the last few years, but have focused mostly, I think, in the Red Deer River Basin. And so we're going to kind of expand that using a couple different tools to try and figure out where are they? And at this point in 2018, what is their distribution so that we can get a handle of, how far have they gone and maybe try and figure out where they aren't yet.
Yeah.
And so we know for sure that they aren't here so that if they get there at some point, we know for certain that in 2018, we didn't have them in that river.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So how do you go about testing for that?
So one of the tools that we're hoping to use this year is eDNA. So that stands for environmental DNA.
Okay.
It's basically a method to test for presence of a species in water. So it's nice. It's not invasive. Like you don't have to go electrofishing. You don't have to go netting. You essentially take a water sample.
Okay.
And then any sort of like, if a fish is in that water, they might release skin cells or feces or anything like that, and that will leave a trace of DNA.
Okay.
And so by taking a water sample, we can test that in the lab and look for that presence of DNA and hopefully that presence of a species.
So how much water do you need to take to be able to test for something like that?
Our protocols this year, we're going to try 5 liters. So we basically filter 5 liters of water into, it just kind of goes into a little filter. We send the filter to the DNA lab and they test it for Prussian carp.
Okay.
So we're hoping that will allow us kind of a quick, you don't have to spend all day out there netting. So we can hit a bunch of water bodies in one day. And then throughout the summer, we should have a fair number of samples.
That's cool.
To kind of send out.
So that's you're going to try a bunch of different water, like where they are right now, and then test some ones where you're not so sure where they are yet.
Yeah, exactly. And there's some, people have kind of done studies here and there, and there's some gaps in, for example, the Red Deer drainage. We know that they're in one area, but they haven't necessarily been tested in at least the database that I've been looking at that the government has kind of throughout the entire drainage. So we'll kind of test some of the places that are missing some, that there's a little bit of a data gap there, and see if there's something that's preventing them from going further west, like if it's an elevation thing or maybe a barrier of some sort.
Right.
And then, if they're kind of flowing all the way into Saskatchewan.
Okay. So what makes this, like, that species so, like, such a worrisome species? Like, how is it possible that something like from Asia is like now entered the water body somehow, some way, we don't know how, but and is like spreading so quickly? Like you said, it's only been 10 to 15 years since we've known they've been there, and it's like, it sounds like they're really taken off. So it seems strange that they're so. Is it just a random, like, they just got lucky that they're well adapted to our environment, or what's the deal?
There's kind of a few things kind of about their biology that make them really successful invaders, particularly in our water bodies. They are capable of living in a variety of waters, but they're really good at living in like low oxygen and highly polluted waterways.
And that's unique to like our native fish aren't.
Yeah, our native fish aren't as good at that.
Oh, okay.
And so a lot of our kind of like pothole lakes and watersheds, tend to favor that kind of species if they can do well in there. They also are really interesting breeders. So they can breed, it's called gynogenesis. It's basically a clonal form of reproduction. Yeah. So you don't need males necessarily to reproduce.
That's terrifying.
So the females,
that's a Jurassic Park situation right there.
Right? The females just need sperm of another sapronid species. We have like fathead minnows and lake chub are kind of all around Alberta. And so the female Prussian carp can use the sperm of these other species to kind of initiate reproduction. Okay. But none of the genetic material actually contributes to the Prussian carp. So it's basically an activation, like it activates the reproduction process. Yeah. But all of the eggs and the resulting fish are all exact clones of the female.
That's so weird. So how does that even? I'm not sure if you know the genetic side of it there, but so like so the sperm enters the egg or whatever, and then
Yeah,
like,
I don't know if it ever actually enters it.
it just somehow
It's
activates
the kind of like growth of the embryo or whatever.
Right.
But yeah, it contributes no genetic material, so it just all be the chromosomes of the female.
That's an amazing adaptation, and a
Right?
terrifying one.
It's terrifying. And
Yeah.
then they can also reproduce 3 times a year,
What?
and they can reproduce after 1 year.
Oh
So
my
after 1
goodness.
year, they can start reproducing. They can reproduce 3 times a year. They don't need males, so it makes them.
That's ridiculous. That's
I
like,
know.
what is it for like walleye? Walleye is like what, 7 years they can reproduce? Like
Yeah.
when they turn 7, they can start reproducing, and they reproduce once a year type thing, right? Something along those lines.
Yeah, I believe so. I can't remember exactly when they start.
That's so like
reproducing.
they've got a huge, ridiculous head. Like, wow, that's terrifying.
Yeah,
That's crazy. Like that's the reproductive cycle of like bugs.
yeah.
You know
or
what I
like
mean?
bunnies or something.
Yeah,
you know?
like just
so
pumping them out like crazy. That's oh wow. And like the low oxygen environment,
yeah,
and then they don't need males, so that's weird.
yeah. And they can, they're kind of a bit of a generalist feeder. They can feed on plants, invertebrates, plankton, zooplankton. So
they could. Like, but do they feed on other fish as well? Is that part of the problem or not so much?
Yeah, I don't think that they would be. I don't know if they would be large enough. I don't think they're piscivorous, so they don't really eat other fish necessarily. But maybe small fish. Maybe they could eat like, I don't know,
Minnows or something.
Yeah, or
okay.
even just like eggs and stuff like that.
Okay.
That's one of the questions that we're hoping to get at. We're going to be netting a couple of ponds that we know that they are in, and we're going to be looking at their sex ratio. So are they all female?
Yeah.
Is that kind of the reproduction that they're using?
Yeah.
And then what kind of diet?
They have.
They have.
Okay.
So
makes sense. So we still don't really, this is still very in the early stages. We really don't know what the impact's going to be. We just know that there's a potential for a lot of bad things to happen. I guess,
exactly.
Okay.
And one of the students out of Mark's lab at the university, they did a study where they looked at kind of the spread of Prussian carp and some of their impacts on native species. And they did find that there was a reduction in native minnows.
Okay.
Yeah, so they were kind of already starting to see some of the effects on our native species.
That's So how big are these Prussian carp roughly?
They can get up to about 13 inches.
Oh, okay.
So
like
quite big.
Like a good sized perch type
Yeah.
thing. Huh. So but that most of them are quite a bit smaller than that. Like they're
Yeah, I think they're kind of in that like 20 centimeter range, but it's
Yeah.
again like we don't know a whole lot about them yet, so
Yeah.
we don't know how large they can grow in Alberta. And,
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they don't
But-
seem to be affected by like our winters and that kind of stuff. It doesn't seem to like,
Doesn't
I guess
seem
the
like
low
it.
oxygen environment, they're fine, right? So
Yeah.
as long as they can handle the temperature of like
Yeah.
4-degree
Yeah.
water. Then...
And I was reading somewhere, I don't know if it's true, but apparently they can perhaps like dig themselves into the mud
and just like
survive
hibernate.
winter.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So I don't know too much about that,
That's like
but
isn't that what frogs do? I think like amphibians. I think some
Yeah.
do that. They just
Maybe.
literally like dig themselves into the mud and just like shut themselves off for 6 months or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
which I mean for Alberta,
Yeah.
sounds great. That's pretty much what we do too, right?
Yeah, everyone just hunkers down, right?
Yeah.
Grab a blanket and cuddle up.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's it. That's a crazy situation. So so we really don't know like anything really.
Yeah, I mean they've been studied in Europe and they've become quite a problem there, but
Yeah, man.
you never really know what it's going to be in your own your own province.
Yeah. Wow. So so if someone are people catching these like with like a rod and reel and stuff? They are
Yeah,
catching
so you
them?
can look on kind of YouTube and if you Google Prussian carp and people are pulling them out like crazy in the Bow River, for example.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so Government of Alberta recommends if you do catch Prussian carp to basically kill them when you get them and then properly dispose of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So they're catching a lot of them, and then are they seeing much of a like population decline in the native species as a result of this yet, or again just starting to research that?
yeah, I think it's still kind of in the beginning stages of that.
Okay.
Yeah, there is the potential for them to significantly impact our native species through kind of direct competition with food and habitat, and then also kind of like what I was mentioning before, they can use the sperm of native species, so you kind of can get this reproductive competition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they can use, as far as we know, they can use the sperm of like any native species, or is it just a few?
Cyprinids, so kind of some of those minnow species.
Minnow species. Okay.
Yeah.
And they're just more genetically similar, you think, or do we really know?
That's a good question. I would guess, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they are genetically similar.
Right.
Whether that's the reason why they can kind of use that as a trigger. That I'm guessing that's an
amazing trait. Like I can't get over that. I'm thinking like that's some alien style.
Yeah, there's not that many species in the world that do that. There are some other species, but not many.
Other fish or?
I think some sharks and some inverts.
Okay. Yeah, that's... Yeah, I hope humans don't develop that. Yeah, that's wild. Like I actually can't get over that. It just seems so alien and like... Yeah, I don't know. It's terrifying to think about. Yeah. Mother Nature finds a way, I guess.
I know, right?
Yeah, that's crazy. So as far as like taking care of this issue and enforcement, like how do you, I don't know, not enforcement's not the right word, I guess, but like trying to eliminate them from the water bodies, right?
Yeah.
How, has there been much research done into how to go about that yet? Is there a specific trait that we can exploit or something?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that they've tried for some carp species, I believe in Australia, because they are clonal, there's not a lot of genetic diversity, so they can be susceptible to things like viruses.
Right.
So in Australia, they tried introducing like a herpes virus. And so apparently that was fairly successful in wiping out a chunk of the population, but I don't know if they would be wanting to try something like that here.
Yeah, it's a whole other bag of worms, right? Because I mean, you introduce a virus of some kind and hope that it's only susceptible to, or that the only fish susceptible to it are the carp, but you don't know.
It's a dangerous game. Australia is kind of, the wild, wild west of introducing things.
Oh, yeah. Australia is known for just like, well, we have rabbits, so let's bring cats. Well, we have cats. Let's bring like dogs. And like, it just keeps, I don't know exactly what animals, but yeah, it seems like they just kept introducing stuff to try and take care of population problems.
Yeah.
No, that's a wild one.
But I think one of the other things is just kind of having a better understanding of how they are expanding and whether it is just kind of this natural growth into whatever water bodies they can get into. Whether it is just a direct movement of one bucket to another water body. And so we're hoping that getting a little bit of better distribution of where they are and are not this year might give us a better handle on some of that. And then once you start looking into it a little bit more, are there any sort of natural barriers that make it harder for them to kind of colonize one area over another? Yeah. So whether it is kind of a water quality type of thing, or whether it's an elevation, maybe they don't like a certain temperature.
Or maybe they can't jump over stuff or whatever.
Yeah. So kind of getting an idea of where they could potentially spread might give us a better idea of where we can put our efforts in to try and prevent their spread.
Right. I remember seeing videos online of like in the States, like people driving their boats down the river and having like carp jump into the boat and stuff. That's not the same species?
It's not the same species.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but those ones are crazy.
They're invasive as well, right? Those
are invasive.
Yeah, those aren't native species. So I imagine those, like you look at those videos and there's like, it seems like thousands of them as the boat's driving by, and they're just jumping. I don't know what that behavior is.
Yeah, it's just specific to that species.
Yeah. So like
that can jump.
Right. So and those carp have similar traits to like these ones, like do you think, or?
Yeah, I mean same thing. They can colonize very polluted and low oxygen.
And they do the cloning thing.
You know what? I'd have to look into it. I don't know if they do.
No,
but they're same thing. They're fast reproducers. Yeah.
So do they find them in the States and like other provinces and stuff? Or like
Prussian carp?
Yeah.
No.
Oh.
So far, we've just found them in Alberta.
That's it.
Yeah.
Huh.
Other than potentially like little stocked ponds and stuff, but they haven't become, they're not spreading throughout those areas like they have in Alberta. So that's another concern. Like we've got the Milk River, obviously, that flows into Alberta, but then it goes down into the States and connects to a bunch of different rivers. So, we have to keep an eye on that.
Yeah, that's the thing. So the water bodies that's being found, you said it's found in a lot of the lakes and rivers and stuff down south. Are they all connected? Or are some of them in different watersheds? Yeah,
a lot of them end up connecting.
Okay.
So, for example, the Bow flows in and meets up with the South Saskatchewan.
Right.
So does the Old Man.
Right.
And there are a bunch of tributaries kind of along the way that all connect in and seem to have Prussian carp in them.
Okay.
So yeah, it's a little bit of a, it's a very connected system.
Yeah.
And so once they're in one, it doesn't seem too hard for them to get to another.
So you're not finding them in kind of isolated lakes so much?
Yeah, they are in some like lakes and ponds, but I think once they kind of got into the river,
Yeah.
they did a very good job at moving through those rivers.
For sure. Yeah. I guess the question what I'm asking is like, would it take, do you think it's possible that it was just one event? Like, you know what I mean? Like one bucket of carp got dumped in the river and that just kind of did all of this? Or is it possible, or maybe there was a few people that like wanted to, like, I want to fish carp, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to fill this pond full of carp and I can fish them, right?
Yeah. For some of those isolated ones, probably. I mean, it would have to be somebody that was moving them around.
So there are some isolated ones that have it as well.
Yeah.
Okay. So then, so it has to be, I guess in those situations, it's kind of intentional, I suppose. But yeah, I wonder, like, that's a weird one. Like, I wonder if there's people literally finding like carp and literally being like, oh, I feel like I really heard that like fishing for carp is good and the carp taste really good. And that like, maybe if I throw them in this pond, it'll like, they'll propagate and I can fish them for my whole life. Like, I wonder if that's the mindset that's going on out there, or if it's just kind of a, like, I don't know. I'm sure like they don't mean to, like, whoever's doing it doesn't mean to totally destroy the landscape or whatever.
No, I think I think a large part of it is that education component of trying to, help people understand that, you know, as much as you might want to fish for this, or, I mean, there are some religion, I don't know if it's religions or what, but they have a component of it that is like releasing a fish as kind of a good luck type of thing. And I think traditionally it might be kind of like a goldfish, but if you get that confused with a Prussian carp, perhaps that could be something. But I haven't really looked into that side of things either. Right. Yeah. It's kind of like a more traditional thing that maybe that's where we can kind of focus some of our education, but I would have to look into that as well.
Yeah, that's worrisome. Yeah, like that's...
Yeah, because it's interesting, like looking at from a food perspective, as much of the research that I've done, I haven't really found anybody to say, like, these are amazing eating.
I was going to ask you that. I was like, are they good to eat? Or
I don't think so. Like, I think they're very bony.
Okay.
They tend to, like, dig around in the sediment and stuff, so I think they can be kind of muddy tasting.
Yeah. Lots of, like, are they like an oilier fish maybe or something? Kind of like a burbot or...
Yeah, I don't know if they're necessarily like that. I mean, I haven't tasted one, but
yeah.
From everything that I've read, it's not something that it doesn't seem to me like you would want to release them just to eat them.
Right. I feel like being that that's your job now, you should probably taste one at some point. I feel like that's kind of your responsibility to know if it's good or not, right?
I'll let you know after we catch some this summer.
Yeah, that's crazy. Now I want to go down and try to catch them and just out of curiosity. But so if someone does catch these things, they're not supposed to release them back in, right? If you catch one, just like kill it, get rid of it, eat it, whatever.
Exactly.
So you're not going to get in trouble for just like killing it and leaving it.
Yeah, no, there's no limit or anything like that.
Yeah, because they're totally invasive species.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's not. Yeah. Yeah, that's man. Yeah, I'm just imagining the mindset of somebody. So it had to be somebody. Somebody had to have released these, right? Like it's whether it was intentional or not. Like, okay, I'm thinking like the situation that everyone gets the goldfish from like the fair or whatever, right? The circus or something. They bring it home and like maybe that's actually a carp.
Yeah.
If they were to like say flush that down the toilet as like as it happens, could that be the result of that?
Yeah, definitely.
Really?
Yeah,
okay.
That could be. It just depends on how they kind of originally got into the province.
Yeah.
Whether it was through, the grocery store type of thing, or whether it's the aquariums. But like I said, I think the government's been trying really hard to prevent some of that import of those kinds of species into the aquarium trade. Or whether it's somebody bringing it from somewhere else where they are allowed. Yeah. Yeah. But at this point, I mean, we don't really know exactly where they're coming from. But I think if we can kind of bring that education component in, try and let people know that, they can have a really negative impact on our watersheds. And then, trying to eradicate where we can. Yeah.
Yeah. Prussian carp. So like, as far as like, it's funny how the invasive species thing is kind of like, it's a problem everywhere, right? Like everyone has that issue, that like invasive species. Like what else? I noticed the other thing was like we have zebra mussels in Alberta now too. Do you know? No? I
think, I don't know if we do yet. But I think the government's been really trying to prevent their spread or coming into Alberta. So that's why we've got a lot of those boat checks and stuff.
Right.
now.
Like the boat checks are pretty, like they're really
pretty standard
coming
now.
across the province or whatever. Yeah. They're like checking little nooks and crannies, making sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think they have them just across the border. So they're trying to prevent them from coming into Alberta.
In Saskatchewan or?
Down south.
Oh, down south.
In the
Oh,
States,
okay.
yeah.
Okay. Because I know like they have them in the Great Lakes,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'm not sure if they have them in like throughout Ontario or whatever. But I know that's like another big invasive species that they're really worried about, because those things just same thing, right? They just take over somehow.
Yeah. Well, and they're really worried about them in southern Alberta, particularly with the irrigation systems and stuff down there. From an economic perspective, they can be very devastating.
Right.
Yeah. Same with Prussian carp. Like if they get into those, and I think they have been getting into those irrigation canals, they can just clog everything up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not good. So as far as affecting other species and stuff like that are concerned, do you guys have any hypothesis on like what the impact might be? Do you think it's just they might take over habitat, or do you think they could potentially eat like enough of the vegetation and stuff like that like say like they eliminate the potential for this like the trophic cascade situation? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I think you're kind of getting at all the potential impacts.
Right.
They can kind of cause a bit of a trophic disrupt with feeding, right? So they can outcompete other fish in that area by eating kind of plankton, zooplankton, and some inverts that other fish might otherwise eat. They can also, because they do eat a bunch of plankton, that can cause some disrupt in the habitat as well, and increased turbidity in the water, and they kind of dig around a bunch in the sediment too. So
turbidity being just
they're known to kind of like more sand and silt in the water.
Right.
Other fish don't really like that kind of habitat, so they would prefer cleaner waters. So as you kind of change the habitat, reduce the number of or the amount of other food for our native species, all of those things could cause a negative impact on our species. Yeah. So whether it's moving our species out of areas where Prussian carp are, or kind of just causing a decline in our populations. Yeah. All those are definitely possible. And like I said earlier, that's kind of what some of the research is starting to show.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is there other places that Prussian carp have like invaded where they've had success in like eradicating them or managing them somehow that you know of?
I would have to look into that a little bit more.
Not really sure. Okay.
But it doesn't sound like anybody has a success story of trying to get rid of them.
So it's really starting from square one. It's not like there's other people have stories that you can like start from, right? Yeah.
I think probably prevention is your best bet at this point. Yeah.
And at this point, if they're already in there, then now, yeah.
It's hard because a lot of the ways that you would get rid of something like that is through something that is going to hurt our other species, right? So, any of those like chemicals or anything that would actually get rid of, like for example, the pond in St. Albert, they've had a problem with goldfish. Okay. And they have been trying to get rid of them for years now. Yeah. And constantly trying to drain it. That doesn't seem to be working. I think they've used different chemical treatments to try and get rid of them, and I think they're finally getting a handle on it. But that's an isolated pond.
Right. It's not. There's no tributaries going into it. It's just yeah. Are there other fish in that pond as well, or is it just the goldfish?
We've been stocking it traditionally with trout, but we haven't been stocking it for the last few years because they've been trying to deal with this goldfish problem.
Yeah. Do these carp carry any kind of specific pathogens or diseases or anything like?
Yeah, not necessarily that I know of.
Right.
But I think because they can reproduce in such large numbers and there are so many of them, they have the potential of spreading a pathogen way faster than a native species might.
Oh, okay. And exactly, because they're all the same. They're all clones. So if one of them gets it, they're all going to get it, and that could.
Yeah, and there's just, higher densities and stuff like that. So it's kind of like fish farming or whatever. There's going to be higher pathogens in a fish farm than there would be in a wild species just because they're closer together. Yeah.
Have they been finding them in fisheries? Like speaking of fish farms, have they been getting into like the fisheries at all, or like the fish farms? I mean,
I don't. Maybe elsewhere. Yeah. I'm not sure, but we don't really have. We don't really have
nothing like that.
I mean, we've got hatcheries, for example.
Or hatcheries, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sure the terminology, but like wherever you get like your wherever you're propagating your trout.
Right. Yeah. Right? No, we haven't gotten any. But those are kind of fairly isolated systems.
So that's called a hatchery. Just so I can get my terminology straight. Yeah, I guess I'm not familiar with the jargon, that's for sure. Okay. So One of the other things that I was looking into recently, and I don't know if you can speak to this much at all, but like the whirling disease is also coming to be like a pretty big issue here, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So when was that detected? And actually, I guess we should start like, what is whirling disease? I know Todd spoke to it quickly, but
right. Yeah. So whirling disease, it's a disease that influences trout, particularly salmonids, and they
salmonids is just a
kind of like a trout is a salmonid,
and whitefish too, I think, right?
Sometimes I'm not very good at my
That's okay.
taxonomy.
I watched a video. I watched a video earlier this morning, and it said, I think it was saying trout and whitefish are susceptible to whirling disease. So
okay, yeah.
We'll stick with that.
Okay. So it influences. I can't remember exactly the pathway, but it basically gives them like a curved spine,
right?
And so that's kind of where the whirling terminology comes from, because it kind of causes fish to swim in a circle.
So it's not like a neurological thing where they're actually like going crazy and going in a circle. It's more of a physiological thing.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so it can it's kind of held in these tube worms that survive in the sediment.
Oh, okay.
And then can get passed to fish.
Okay.
It was first detected down in Banff.
Yeah.
And they found it kind of throughout, same thing, like the Bow River and a bunch of those southern watersheds. Yeah. And then I think they've just recently detected it in a few other rivers throughout Alberta. So it's same thing. It's kind of spreading quickly. The thing with whirling disease is we don't necessarily know how negatively it can impact our native species.
Right.
So some species can get it and be totally fine, or some fish can have it and be totally fine, whereas some can kind of show these whirling patterns.
Right.
So it has the potential to be very devastating, but we haven't necessarily seen that devastation on a large scale yet in our fisheries. So that's good.
Yep. No, it is. Yeah.
But same thing. I think right now they're just testing a bunch of different watersheds to figure out where it is and where it isn't.
Right. That's a pretty new thing too, right? Like around the same time as the carp that became an issue.
Yes.
That's when we noticed the whirling disease too, right?
Yeah.
I wonder if there's any connection there, or if it's just kind of.
Yeah, I don't know, because I don't know if carp could actually carry the disease.
They're total, because they're not a would you call it, a salmonid?
Salmonid, yeah.
Salmonid, yeah. So they're not one of those types.
No.
Okay, they're totally different.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But whirling disease was found in some of our hatcheries.
Okay.
And so, like you were asking before, can you get that? And so they found it in the hatcheries, and so they stopped stocking for a few of the ponds that were traditionally stocked by those hatcheries where they found a positive.
So if they found whirling disease in a pond that was previously stocked, they'd stop stocking that pond for a while and kind of let them die out? Or?
Yeah, they haven't actually, I don't know if they've quite tested all the ponds yet, but anything that was stocked by those hatcheries that were found to be positive, they stopped stocking for the subsequent years. So we're still kind of waiting to hear from the government as to whether we can start stocking some of those again.
Oh, okay. And those hatcheries are still...
the hatcheries are, I think they kind of cleaned them all out. And
okay.
Yeah.
They just start from scratch again and then they're good to go.
Yeah.
Okay. So is that a native like pathogen? Or you said it's carried by a parasite, right?
I can't remember
by a worm
if it's
of some kind.
Pathogen or a virus.
Right.
I'd have to look into it again. But yeah, it's found in a worm.
Okay.
And so it can kind of hide in the sediment.
Okay.
And then I don't know if it can be passed from like fish to fish.
That's what I was wondering. Can it only be picked up from specifically the worm, or if one fish has it, can it, like, I don't know.
Yeah, I'd have to do some research again.
Yeah, I have no idea. Yeah. Okay.
But I can't remember where I was going with that.
That's okay. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
I have brain farts all the time on this thing. I try to keep flowing in the right direction, but like, we're all human.
Yeah. Oh, you were asking if it's been around forever.
Yeah.
We don't really know. I think they have found records of it in the past, but sometimes you don't know it's there until you go looking for it.
Yeah.
So it was they could see the effect in fish in some of these areas kind of around Banff. I can't remember the name of the lake that they originally found it in.
Okay.
But then this kind of spurred this huge project to go and figure out where whirling disease was and wasn't.
Yep.
And like I said, we don't really know how devastating it can be on our populations. And you can find some fish that have had it and are totally fine. So it could have been in our province for a really long time. So
you could test for the whatever virus or for whirling disease. The fish may not be showing any symptoms, but may have it and may be fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it could have been here for a while.
Mm-hmm.
It could have just recently been found.
So we don't know if there was no, like say 100 years ago or whatever, there was no records of whirling disease ever being found, really?
Yeah, or necessarily like a problem.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So it may be just a virus that exists, that it's like the common cold for human beings. It's not the end of the world, but it does exist, and we want to try and mitigate that problem and not perpetuate it through a bunch of stock lakes or whatever. Oh, okay. Okay, cool. Is there any other like invasive species that are like that you can think of that are like they're just kind of up and coming and are a real problem as far as like water bodies and stuff like that? Just kind of those ones for now.
I think kind of. Yeah, there's a few different carp species, but none that have kind of spread as much as Prussian carp.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So
I'm trying to think of any other ones, but that's kind of those are the ones that are coming to mind. And then some of the ones that the government is trying to prevent kind of coming into Alberta. There are some different like plant species and stuff that are issues, but
invasives
in terms of
are
fish,
huge. Yeah. Gotcha. Okay. And yeah, like you said, for management, so it's like right now it's still just you're trying to take an accounting of what's going on so that you can decide what to do, I guess, later, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So is it is it just the ACA that's doing these types of studies, or is like the government involved with that as well? Or?
Yeah, I mean, so we work closely with government. This was identified as one of the priorities for this year. So we will be giving all of our data at the end of this to the government, and then kind of working on whether this project goes into a second or third or however many years to figure out, if there is something that we can do about them or further studies about their impact on native species.
Yeah. So it seems like a really concerning issue because like you said, if these things can reproduce at that rate, like that gets out of hand really quickly, right? So so as of yet, you said that they haven't yet found it in really BC or in Saskatchewan. It's just kind of isolated in Alberta, right? Yeah.
Okay. So I think we're gonna see if we can kind of follow it along the river, and see if it's kind of on our border, on the South Saskatchewan or on the Red Deer. I imagine it would be in Saskatchewan. Yeah.
Would you guys just like throw a net up or what?
I don't know. That might be up to Saskatchewan as to whether they want them or not. But I mean that could be one thing. But I imagine that they would be in there already.
Yeah, I would think so. If they're in the tributaries, then why? Yeah, it doesn't. All it takes is one, right? Yeah.
So,
by the sounds of it, all it takes is one, which is terrifying.
But I mean, if we can provide kind of that warning to that, that province too, and say, hey, we found them here and they're coming your way. So.
This is what we found that works. This is what doesn't work. We don't know. Yeah, crazy. Okay. Just kind of switch gears for a minute about. I know there's been some people have been like showed concern about. I don't know if you can speak to this or not, and if you can't, just say so. Like, it's not a big deal. But like in recent years, the last few years, we've seen like tag numbers go down for fish, like the allowed amount of fish you're allowed to remove from water bodies and stuff like that. Yeah. And I guess people just assume that means populations are down and we need to, be more conservative with our catch, right? Can you speak at all to the population levels kind of across the province, like where we're sitting? Because I know that we recently brought in, I think it was a couple of years ago, we brought in the like tag for like walleye in some lakes and that. Yeah, I'm just curious because I guess there's probably some reports out there I can look at, but
So it's the government of Alberta that sets all of the regulations for the province.
Of course, yeah.
I think kind of moving to this tag system is kind of partly because we have we have sensitive native species that their populations kind of over the years have been in decline.
Okay.
We also have we've got a lot of people fishing in the province and not a lot of fisheries. When you compare our province to Saskatchewan, for example.
Okay.
The number of people per lake, for example, is very, very high in Alberta.
It is, okay.
And so in order to kind of make it fair for the species and then try and make it fair for everybody else, I think kind of going to that tag system makes it a little bit easier for managers to say, target a certain size, a certain species, and have a better idea of what's coming out of the lake.
Yeah.
So to better manage our populations there.
For sure. No, it totally
but
makes
from
sense.
kind of a broader standpoint of, how our populations are doing, that's kind of more of a a government question.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I wasn't sure if you guys were doing those studies or who was.
Yeah,
doing
I
them,
mean,
so.
we do a little bit of so we'll run creel surveys in the summer typically.
Okay.
Those involve if you ever kind of get asked by somebody at a lake how many fish you caught and how long you're out for and stuff like that. Those are usually our staff kind of asking those questions.
Gotcha.
Then that information goes to the government, and that's how they make some of their population estimates.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Cool. Okay, I know. Like this year, I hope I don't get confused here. There was a few lakes that they had like a zero limit on like pike and stuff like that. Yeah, I never even really would have thought that northern pike would have been a real problem because they seem to just, I don't know, they seem to be everywhere. You know what I mean? So it's interesting that now there's even starting to be like regulations on that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
So it's no.
Well, I mean, it's kind of like anything is.
It
if
is.
you've got a lot of people fishing for them, and
Yeah.
Everybody takes one or
Yeah.
a couple, right? Over time, that adds up.
Yeah, it adds up big time. Yeah, and do you know? I'm just curious. Like, this is just as far as cause we were talking about the reproduction rate of like native fish and stuff like that in relation to carp. But they do take like a few years to get to.
Yeah, most of our native species, I think, take a little while longer.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's not like there's a real quick turnaround like that. So it might take a few years of reduced catch limits to bring populations back up to like a stable level, I guess. Just because.
Yeah, or it might just kind of be the new. I mean, not necessarily a zero bag limit, but some of these tag things might just it might not be something that they're just moving to for a little bit to kind of boost populations again. It might just kind of be the new status quo.
Just because there's so many people fishing.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, because the population of Alberta is like drastically increased over the last, 30 years? We've like doubled or something along those lines, like something crazy.
Yeah, there's a lot of people.
Yeah, so that makes sense.
Yeah,
I think
and I can't remember. I wish I could remember the stats, but if you kind of look at how many people there are, how many fishing licenses we sell in a year, for example, versus the number of water bodies that we have that are actually fishable, compared to other provinces, is just astounding.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
We've got lots. Yeah. No, I love it. It's great. Like, even if it's just catch and release, it's still just a fun time, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that's cool.
And even, I mean, catch and release can have a negative influence on our species as well. Like if you can imagine getting, snagged on a hook 5 times in one day over, the entire summer, that can start to, you do get a certain amount of mortality just from catch and release as well.
Yeah.
So kind of factoring all of those things in, it's understandable that we're kind of moving towards more of these catch and release or tagged systems.
No, for sure. It makes sense. Yeah. And a lot of them died just from the stress of being pulled out too, right? It's not necessarily that like, the hook got jammed into their gullet or whatever. It's just just the stress of being pulled from 30 feet to 0 feet. Like they get, I've had situations where you get the walleye,
like a barrel trauma type of thing.
Like where you pull them out from like 30 or 40 feet while ice fishing or something. When you pull them up, they're like they're, I don't know what that's called.
Like their swim bladder.
The swim bladder is coming out of their mouth.
Yeah.
Right? You're like, oh, Jesus. Like, what did I do? Right?
Yeah.
So they get the bends, I guess, too. Hey?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah. Yeah. And like on the coast, I'm actually trained more in the marine side of things.
Right.
And so on the coast for like rockfish and stuff like that, because they'll pull them up from quite far. And so they've moved to a system where they've tried to kind of encourage people to actually put them back in almost like a decompression chamber.
Oh, okay.
So you release them back down and then release them to a certain depth so that helps kind of bring their swim bladder back to their normal state. Otherwise they can't swim back down because they're all poofed up, right?
Oh, right. So just like they'd have to, it would take too long for them to whatever.
Yeah.
Decompress or whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not a biologist. I don't know. Well, that's crazy. I guess that kind of covers was there any kind of final thoughts that you had regarding Prussian carp or fishing in the province, that kind of stuff that you wanted to throw in there?
No, I mean, I guess I don't know kind of what your listener base is, but
still growing, still trying to figure that out myself.
If you think that you've caught Prussian carp somewhere and have an idea of where they are, I would love to hear from you and just kind of put an extra point on the map.
Sure.
And hopefully we'll get a better handle of where they are this year, and then hopefully study a little bit about what their influence can be on our native fish, and hopefully come up with some sort of form of either eradication or something to prevent their spread. So
yeah, herpes, it's the answer.
Yeah, we'll see. The next podcast.
Yeah, I'd be really curious to hear about that if that's the way we went with it, right? Like, okay, interesting choice. Right, we got herpes in the water now.
Yeah.
Is that going to affect our drinking water? I don't know what's the deal.
It sounds like a mess.
It does sound dangerous, right? Crazy. Is there like is there somewhere where people can reach out to you or the ACA and give their...
So if you you can either reach me directly. I think you can look me up on our website. My name is Britt Schmidt. And then, or you can kind of reach out to our general Alberta Conservation email line or phone number, which is all on our website.
Okay. So basically, if you catch one, just shoot you guys an email or something, just so you know, you might be the first person to catch one in that area.
In a certain area. Yeah, exactly. Okay.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, that was perfect. I think that, that pretty much covers it. But yeah, I think when you guys do maybe in a year or two or whatever, however long it takes, and you guys sort out what the management scheme is going to be or where they are or how you can affect them, then it'd be sweet to have you back on and we can discuss that. Yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah. So awesome. Thanks a lot for coming on.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks
Perfect.
for having me.
Thanks a lot for listening, guys. If you have any questions for Britt or myself, you can shoot me an email at yourforestpodcast@gmail.com, and hopefully I can find answers to your questions. Or also you can reach out to her or to the ACA through their website. They have contact information there. If you guys catch carp or you want to let them know, it's a really good idea. So thanks a lot for listening. Don't forget to rate and review and leave comments on iTunes and the website and all that kind of stuff. Also, I'm on all the social medias, Your Forest Podcast. Check it out. Thanks a lot for listening, guys, and we'll catch you next time.